Welcome to my mini-series where you try to guess the state and country I'm talking about before the video ends using only the clues along the way. Comment down below your guess before I reveal it at the end. So can you guess this state, which has roughly 580,000 people living inside 98,000 square miles, which is fewer residents than the city of Tucson, spread across a landscape that geologists say is actively trying to tear itself apart from the inside? Let's talk about what it actually is. Drive west across the state on a gray October morning. The high desert rolls in every direction, dry sage releasing its sharp, medicinal scent into cold air. There are no towns, there are no billboards, there is a hawk suspended above the road like it's been painted into the sky. And then, for miles and miles, there is nothing but the sound of wind moving through grass that has been doing this since before anyone alive today drew their first breath. It is the least populated state in the entire country. Think about that. All these mountains, all this water, all these valleys carved by glaciers over thousands of years, and almost nobody lives here. When you stand in those open spaces, you start to feel it, the weight of all that emptiness pressing into something ancient in your nervous system. It is unsettling and deeply beautiful at the same time. Now imagine standing at the base of Devil's Tower in the northeastern part of the state. This thing rises more than 1,200 feet above the surrounding plains without warning, without logic, without any geographical reason you can immediately accept. It is the exposed core of an ancient volcanic intrusion, meaning what you are looking at is essentially the skeleton of something that erupted and was then slowly revealed over millions of years as the softer rock around it eroded away. The vertical columns scoring its surface were formed as the molten rock cooled and contracted. Indigenous peoples across many nations consider this place sacred, and when you stand at its base and tilt your head back, you begin to understand why. It does not feel accidental, it feels deliberate, intentional, like something placed here by a force that operates on timescales humans cannot emotionally process. On stormy days, when clouds tear apart around its summit and thunder moves through the valley floor, the energy radiating off that structure is almost overwhelming. There is also this strange chapter in its history. In 1977, a film director chose this exact rock formation as the meeting point between humans and something from beyond our world. And whether you believe in any of that or not, the choice feels right, because Devil's Tower already looks like a message. Move west now, into the thermal country. A national park sits on top of one of the largest volcanic systems on the planet. What most visitors see are the geysers and the bison and the crowds forming around Old Faithful at predictable intervals. But pay attention to the edges of those thermal features. Watch the way steam drifts low across boardwalks in the early morning before tour buses arrive. Notice how the ground around certain hot springs shifts through impossible colors. Rings of orange and rust and deep cobalt blue that have nothing to do with any color you expect to find in nature at that scale. Those colors come from heat-loving microorganisms that thrive in conditions that would kill most life instantly. They have been living in those springs for a very long time, longer than humans have been watching. The Grand Prismatic Spring is the largest hot spring in the country, and it looks, from the air, like a wound in the earth that never healed. Up close, standing at its edge, the steam obscures and reveals it in pulses, and there is a sulfurous weight to the air that makes you feel like you are somewhere genuinely prehistoric. The first accounts of this national park's wonders were dismissed as lies when explorers brought them east. People could not believe a place like this existed. The stories sounded too extreme, too strange. And yet, here it is, still erupting, still bubbling, still painting the ground in colors that have no name in ordinary language. South of the thermal basin, the Teton Range appears in a way that other mountains do not. Most mountain ranges ease themselves into your view with foothills and gradual elevation and preparatory scenery. The Tetons do not bother with any of that. They erupt from a flat valley floor almost vertically. No foothills, no transition, just a sudden jagged wall of rock and snow rising thousands of feet into blue air. The fault line beneath them is still active. These mountains are still moving upward, still growing, still becoming. In the valley below, before sunrise, when mist sits low over the Snake River and the only sound is water moving over stones, you can stand at a spot called Schwabischer Landing and watch the mountains reflect in a surface so still it looks like a second sky laid flat on the ground. The whole scene has a quality of something happening in a dream. The light comes slowly, shifting from dark gray to pale gold. And for a few minutes, every color in the world seems saturated and deliberate and worth preserving. Jackson, the town at the valley's southern end, carries two identities simultaneously. There is the version tourists find, the elk antler arches framing the town square, the galleries and ski slopes. And then there is the older version that still breathes underneath, the trapper history. The fact that this valley was one of the last places in the American West to be permanently settled, because its winters are extreme and its isolation is total. Even today, when a hard snowstorm closes the passes, Jackson becomes an island. At the northern end of this valley, the National Elk Refuge protects thousands of wintering elk every year. In early morning, in winter, herds of them move through fog-covered meadows like something conjured rather than real. Their breath hangs in the cold air. Their antlers catch whatever light manages to filter through clouds. It is the kind of image that does not compress into a photograph correctly. You have to be there. You have to feel the temperature and hear the sound of hooves on frozen ground. Then, there is the Wind River Range further east. Most people skip it entirely. It does not have the name recognition of Yellowstone or the Tetons, but it contains 7 of the largest glaciers found in the contiguous United States. 600 miles of trails pass through meadows drenched in wildflowers in July and into high passes that touch 11,000 feet of elevation. This just shows you its most patient, most silent face. Days out here without phone signal, without crowds, just the sound of water through rocks and the wind making different notes in different valleys. The Wind River Indian Reservation also lies in this region. The Shoshone and Arapaho people have lived in and around these mountains and rivers for generations. Their presence here predates every map that white explorers ever drew of this landscape by centuries. The land carries that history in ways that are not always visible, but are always present. There is something that it does to a person that is hard to describe without sounding excessive. It rearranges your sense of proportion. You arrive thinking you are a significant object moving through space, quietly, without drama, without announcement, and correct that impression. The scale here is not human scale. The timeline here is not a human timeline. And rather than being depressing, this turns out to be one of the most freeing things a person can experience. Because if the land has been here this long, if these mountains are still growing, if thermal vents have been pushing steam through this same valley floor for hundreds of thousands of years, then whatever is troubling you today exists in a very different context than it did before you arrived. Well, do you know the state? Comment down below before I reveal it in 3, 2, 1. It's Wyoming. Let me know if you figure it out before the end and say what gave it away. There is more to come, so stay tuned and see if you can guess them correctly. Thanks for watching.